This is Dr. Sage, bringing you a discussion on Huna entitled The Quest for Power. From the time you were born, before that, when you first came into the world, when your essence came in here, you were on a quest for power. Power in its true sense, meaning able to do, ability, effectiveness. When the cells of your body first began forming together, when your spirit came in and started being aware of the world, there was a continually growing movement to be more and more effective in this dimension, in this world. That hasn't stopped. It never will stop. It's an automatic kind of programming process that's in you. Some people with their conscious minds may think they've stopped it, but always it's there, this quest for increasing your effectiveness in the world. Somewhere along the line, people learn other things about power in order to be more effective, especially if they're brought up with an idea that the world is a dangerous place. Then several other ideas kind of stem from that, because we've all got to find our power, our ability to survive, our ability to be effective in some way in the world. And so some people will take the viewpoint that, well, if this is a dangerous world, and that's an assumption, and I've got to have power in the world, then what I've got to do is control everything. I've got to make sure that nothing gets out of place, that people do exactly what I want them to do, because if they don't, they're uncontrollable, and I'm in danger. And so they start looking for ways and means to control things around them. Especially if a child is born into a controlling family, where this is already a practice, then that child learns very quickly how to start trying to control people. And the way to try and control people is make them feel guilty, is to make them depend on you for any kind of emotional or mental support, in which case, you give them criticism and you give them a little bit of praise maybe. You teach them how to try and please you. But basically you learn how to control. Well, those children learn how to control as well. A difficulty arises, though. It's kind of easy to set up a situation in a family where everybody in the family pretends that control like that really exists. But then they get out into people who don't have that same family structure. They get out into the world with playmates, with teachers, with schooling, friends, and social activities where you can't control, where the control doesn't seem to work so well. And so because they still believe that they've got to control to be effective, they start controlling themselves and their reactions and their emotions. You've got only one way to control that flow of emotion in the control sense, and that is to clamp down on it with your muscles. And in some parts of the society, it's taught that this kind of self-discipline, this power over yourself to control your emotions is a very desirable thing. And so people learn how to suppress their feelings, suppress their sensitivity not only to their own emotions, but they learn how to suppress their sensitivity to other people's emotions. Also, they won't be hurt, which is a high ideal, which is a really a basically good thing that the self is trying to do for you. It's just not real effective, because it's almost like taking some kinds of drug or alcohol or something like that, where you start out in a little bit, holds it down and masks it, and then you got to take a little more to get the same job done, and a little more, and a little more, and a little more. Well, the tension buildup is the same kind of thing. So some people then, in order to still be effective, they find they can't function if they're too tense, then they use something else to help them function and be more effective. And the intent is good. The intent is a noble one. It's just often that the ways and means that they're offered aren't too good, have their own limitations. And so again, they may use drugs, or they may use eating, or they may use alcohol, or they may use any number of things to be more effective. And when they're using all of these things out, some people will use success or praise from others. Some people will turn in, their kids will turn in to be more effective, to be able to survive. They'll turn into clowns. They'll be the ones who joke all the time. And maybe they'll get that applause, they'll get that appreciation. Oh, appreciation is such an important thing for human beings. It's vital, virtually, to our existence. Respect, appreciation, those kinds of things, whatever you want to call it. But the teaching has been that you got to get this from outside. You got to get it from other people. At the same time, that most of the teaching is everybody else is more important than you are. Everybody else. When you're a kid, you got to share all your toys with anybody, whoever it is. You got to give them the biggest cookie or the biggest piece of pie. You got to give, sometimes even your clothes if somebody wants it. Somebody wants you to do a favor, you got to do them the favor. Somebody wants you to really sacrifice your time and energy, and you got to do it for them. You're going into school, and you've got work to do, and you've got your studies to do, or you've got something that you're trying to do, and somebody asks you a favor, and there's this compulsion inside you. You got to do the favor for them. You can't let them down. You got to help your friends. And in the process, you're destroying yourself and belittling yourself and putting yourself down all the time. And you end up, after a while, wondering why you feel so lousy all the time. Why the world seems so bleak. Why there doesn't seem to be any future or anything opening up. Why? What's the point of it? What's it all worth? That's because you've given your power away. And that's not a criticism. That isn't a criticism. Don't take that to be a put down either. I was thinking of how we could teach more and more people not to criticize, so I came up with a bumper sticker I think we can all put on the car. It says, criticism is bad. Okay? Now sometimes even in describing something like this, the automatic assumption is that it's a criticism, but it's not. You were taught to give your power away. You were trained in it. Well, that's kind of understandable, all right? So there's no blame here. I mean, your parents were a lot bigger than you when you were born. They're the ones responsible for your nourishment, for taking care of you. And they can hit hard, if it happens. So sure, they seem to have a lot more power than you do. And as you grow up, however, very subtly, it's almost rare that there's ever a parent or a teacher or somebody in authority that knows exactly what they're doing. But what they are doing is training you to always think of somebody else as having the authority. And so you grow up with that. And you're looking for your power outside, for somebody else's approval of you. As if you don't have a right to exist unless somebody else gives you a stamp of approval. Whether it's your friends, your peers, again, other people in society, older adults, younger people, babies sometimes. If a baby doesn't want to go in your arms, some people are crushed. Right? That's right. They take that as a personal rejection. And, the baby doesn't know any different. Baby, who knows what's going on in its mind? But because we've taught to give our power to others, that they have the authority over us, we don't feel we have any. Often not even the authority to decide that what we're thinking and feeling is important. Often you can go to a therapist of some kind, and you know what you're feeling. And you know how you hurt and where you hurt. And he'll say, or she'll say, whatever, no, your problem is, and then he'll make a list of your problem that he's already decided upon because you got it out of a book or because you have some of the things that he's taught always show certain symptoms. And you'll say, well, gee, wait, maybe he's right. Maybe that's how I'm feeling. Okay? And what you'll do, in order to conform, you'll develop and make up those feelings in yourself so that you'll match the picture given by the outside authority. Okay? We have a word for power in Huna that is mana. And I've been talking about probably the most important aspect of it. Mana is spiritual power, inner power, power in general, okay? But it has two meanings. One is energy, but it's really energy in the process of doing something. And the other one is authority. And the most important power is authority, because when you've got authority, you have lots of energy. If you find yourself physically low in energy, as you build your self-esteem, which is a kind of a way of building your own inner authority over your life, you'll find you'll have abundant energy. You won't lack for energy. Building and rebuilding that sense of authority inside, that the word self-esteem has been given to. Okay? Building that is probably the most important task you can have as an individual. And yet, again, we're taught, don't get too big for your britches. Don't get a big head. Okay? Don't try to be too smart. Don't try to be too important. Don't. This is based on the idea that the only way to make yourself more important is to put everybody else down. Because in a world where all authority and everything is outside, the only way to be the biggest authority is to have everything outside smaller than you. So it still stems from that kind of idea that all the authority is exterior. But if that authority comes from inside, comes from you yourself, there's no need to put everybody else down. You can think of yourself as great, wonderful, terrific, a superhuman being, or just pretty nice, depending on what you can accept right now, without comparing yourself to anybody else. You can compare your talents to other people if that kind of thing helps you to get a greater sense of self-esteem, and that's okay to start with. That's good, as a matter of fact. You need to start someplace. And in some talents and some things, you'll be better than an awful lot of other people. In that talent, your talent will be more refined. Your talent will be better. Your expression of that talent will be better. You're not a better human being. You are a human being. Okay? You're a different human being. You're a unique human being. But in order to build your power, you don't have to put anybody else's power down. Within each one of us, part of each one of us, is that divine spark. That divine spark is one flame, one fire that we're all part of, that we're all expressions of. Each one of us partakes of that greatness, of that infinity. So when you're taking part of that and being a part of that and recognizing that part in you, there's no difference with all the other people. And there certainly is no lowering of yourself. No one has more authority over you and your life than you do. No one. If you let yourself recognize that everything that you've done supposedly on the authority of other people has been done based on your own choice. Now, you thought it was the wisest choice at the moment, that's okay. But it was your choice. A little story someone shared with me on that issue. This was a woman who was waiting for a man, and waiting in a park or something like that. And the man was late. And he was late, and he was late, and he was late. He was 2 hours late. And she was fuming. She was so angry. This guy was somewhat enlightened. When he came, finally, she said, "You made me wait 2 hours." He stood back and says, "What are you getting so angry about? I didn't make you do anything. You chose to wait. You could have chosen to go at any time you wanted to." And he didn't say that in an angry way. He just said it, so it was your choice. You decided to wait 2 hours, okay. Why get angry at me? Oh, that kind of puts a different light on it. But it's true. She chose. See? In the same way, no one makes you unhappy. No one makes you unhappy. People do certain things, and either out of habit or choice, you get angry. No one can make you get angry. Sometimes that's not such a pleasant thing to contemplate. I mean, there's no scapegoats anymore. Okay? You can't even blame your parents for the way you turned out. All the way along the way, you chose how to react. And every day, without even realizing it probably, you choose again how you're going to act that day. You choose your reactions and your actions. The authority is yours. Now, what can you do? What can you do to begin taking your authority back? Begin building yourself up again and gaining that state of confidence and happiness and energy and talent that each and every one of you has. Well, in Huna, we have a concept of three selves. And a man named Max Freedom Long wrote a lot about Huna, and he wrote about these three selves. He called them the high self, the middle self, and the low self. Well, for years and years, I have refrained from using those terms because, I didn't want to give a sense that the low self was really way down low and bad and stuff like that. But today I came across an idea in my inspirations that I think is useful. It's quite different from Max Long's formula where, the high self and the low self are connected and the middle self has to go through the low self to get to the high self. Well, forget about that. We're using it in a different way now. And we'll think of this as big U, middle U, and little u, if you like. Okay? Or the big mind, the middle mind, and if you don't like little, let's call it the brain mind. The big you, the higher self, the larger part of you is that part of you that you recognize every once in a while when you feel this tremendous sense of expansion and joy and limitless. Think back in your life if at any time that ever happened to you. With most people it's happened at least once or twice. If it's never happened to you, just come see me. I'll help you experience it sometime. Okay? But that exists at some moment, usually for everyone. I mean, there's a real great sense, and there's a real deep sense of happiness and okayness, and it may be very brief, it may be frequent, for different people it's different. But there is that sense. Often you get it when you're looking at some incredible view of nature. It just kind of, as people say, takes you out of yourself. What it does is expand you, and expands you into that larger self, which is also you, that you're a part of. So we'll call it the larger self, the higher self. The middle you, most people don't even know what that is, because they have gotten so linked with their body, with their brain, with their physical self, that they were hardly taught there was anything else. Even when they've tried to separate themselves off from their body and suppress all emotions and stuff like that, they're still closely linked because they're afraid of the body. They're afraid of the feelings that come through it. But this middle part of you is your identity. Your own self that you know is you apart from anything else. It is the you that is still you since the time you were a baby or young, as far back as you can remember, and as many years as it takes in the future that you stay in this particular plane, you'll still have that same sense of being you. That's you. That's your identity. That's a kind of a middle self, and it's a mediator, an integrator between the higher self and your physical self, your body mind, your brain mind, if you like. Well, one way that you can start taking your own authority back is to recognize that role as mediator and take the role of telling and talking to your brain, to your body, to this physical self, and giving it guidance and instruction the way you would do if you were training someone else that you wanted to train into being healthier and happier and more effective. You start taking, in other words, a kind of a teacher-guide role for yourself. So you can say, hey, wait a second. All the habits that you've got, all the negative habits that you've got are just ways that your brain has been trained to react. All the fears and all the reactions and all that kind of stuff, your brain was just trained to react that way. So you don't have to get mad at it. That doesn't help. It's like some kid that was trained how to do something in an ineffective way. You got to retrain it. So when you find yourself getting upset, disengage. You're not getting upset. Your body's getting upset because your brain is giving it a certain message. That's all. You got a recurring thought that comes up in your mind over and over again that bothers you almost compulsively. Disengage. That's not your thought. It's a thought that the brain is reviewing because of some stimulus in the environment or in the physical body. All kinds of things can serve as stimulus. I was eating a French pastry that had some almond paste in it, and as I was eating it, suddenly I was back in Pittsburgh when I was about 4 years old, because my Aunt Betty used to make Italian cookies that had that almond paste in them, and my brain got that stimulus from the environment, and just immediately my mind was back in that kitchen. Okay? Real full sense of it. So all kinds of stuff from the environment can trigger our brain's reactions that got nothing to do with the way you usually or even intend to want to think. And so when you disengage, you can recognize that.
What does it mean to disengage?
All right. Really what I mean is remember that it's the brain reacting. Okay? And that it's not something you can't help. When you're not helpless, it's not like, oh, I'm worried about... No, you're not worried. Your brain is giving pictures about a certain thing. You see what I mean? That way of disengaging allows you to take the authority for making changes.
Just look at it, really. Like while it's happening, just look at it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's a feeling of... as an observer. As an observer. Okay? And then as a director, a guide. I'm giving you that real simple. Of course, that takes a lot of practice and training.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's the thing. Then the observer's got to remember that the big self is up there. It's not alone. See? One of the things that makes us feel powerless is that we think we're alone here. When we say we're going to take responsibility, we're going to make our reality work, that we've got to do it all by ourselves. Well, we don't. There's the big guy right behind us, you know, ready to help with unlimited energy, unlimited ideas. Your higher self, that spiritual self. See? If you think of it as a bigger, larger, gigantic you that's got all kinds of energy and power and information that it can give you instantly, as soon as you start thinking in that way, you'll create a kind of a mental channel for all of that stuff to come through. Yes?
You mentioned Max Long. Are you talking about the active bodies at all right now?
Right now I'm not. Okay? I'm not talking about the alka bodies. Okay? Just about these minds in general. Okay? And that sensing of having that larger self, that higher self, and of you as your own identity being an intermediary, an integrator, the observer on this end, the receiver from the other end. Okay? A channel, if you like, but remembering an active channel, not a passive one. An active channel directs the energy that's flowing through it. And that's what you are, as an active channel. And all it takes is remembering that the brain has been taught to react certain ways, and it can be taught other ways. Remembering that you're an identity in and of yourself, and you're the connecting link, that you can look outward as well as inward, that's you that's doing that. And that there's this big self, this high self, this greater self. You can think of it any way you like, but since we have a physical orientation kind of up and back behind us, is a good one. But it's connected to you, it's part of you, it's something you can actually learn to step back into and feel. And I mean that literally, you can actually feel that sense of being larger. Yes?
Does it mean it's like that would be like our soul?
You can think of it as your soul, yes. Okay? Remembering that your soul is not something that you can lose. Okay? Your soul is what you are. Okay? It's that immortal, godlike or God part of you. Right. But if you just think of it as a bigger self with all this power available, you know you're not alone.
How do we get in touch? Like, how would I get in touch with my higher self?
The main thing is the acknowledgement that it's there. And one of the easiest ways to get in touch is to look at something beautiful and see how that feels. Okay? And to imagine it being there and that you have the ability to move out into it. And then you look at your life from a perspective, from a different perspective, a larger perspective. And you'll almost always find it, the sense of that is a kind of a soothing one, you know. Oh, you got troubles, little kid? I'll help you. Kind of thing. Yes.
Although, I think that you can't approach it with anything that's negative, because I don't think it doesn't even recognize it. It can't see any negativity at all.
That's right. It's not oriented toward negativity. You pull right out of the negativity when you contact that part of yourself. Because the negativity, as we experience it, is just ineffective ways that the brain has been trained.
Is the higher self what we used to call subjective or subconscious mind?
This would be more like superconscious mind. For all practical purposes, the brain is subconscious mind. Okay? Yes?
If you turn away from the higher self and just think that you run the universe totally, does the energy mass get smaller? Or, when you just cut yourself off from the soul, what happens?
What happens is that you usually go for a little while on some artificial ego, okay? Artificial ego, artificial sense that you're doing it, and you run smack up into a problem. You run smack up into falling on your face, suddenly getting depressed, suddenly feeling helpless, and out of control. That's what usually happens. Okay? So yes, you're cutting yourself off from a great deal of energy. You're cutting off from a great deal of intuition. It's as if you were going to go skiing and you decided to tie your left arm and your left leg behind you, and there you're going to go skiing, okay? You got to get a little ways, all right? So it's not like truly cutting yourself off, because you can't. But it's ignoring that just the same way that you can deaden the feeling in an arm or cut off the feeling in some part of the body by tightening your muscles against any awareness of it. Okay? But that part of you there, it is an integral part of you. For the last few moments here, getting in touch with the high self, recognizing it's there, taking the position of training your brain, body, subconscious, however you want to call it, taking that midway position for your conscious self is one good way to begin building and retaking that power. And the other real quick way is never criticize. Never criticize yourself. Always praise. And wherever possible, apply the same outside around you. But mainly to yourself. Right? Number one. Build your own self up. Praise yourself all day long. Honestly. Not with false stuff.
Even when you're screwing up.
Even when you're screwing up, find something in it that you're doing right. Find something in it that you're doing right and focus on that. And the other stuff that isn't working right, don't make it important. And with that, you begin really following that natural quest for power that you started off on, that you're never going to finish. Aloha.